Story time about how I got stuck in an elevator with my ex and we ended up doing the dirty. My ex and I broke up in 2020 during COVID. Disclaimer, is not my story time. I sent me on Instagram. Our relationship was really toxic. You know, the usual. He was super controlling, jealous. He would try to control everything I did, who I would hang out with, and he even envied my career. After dating for 6 months, I told him that we should reevaluate our relationship. I actually had no intention of breaking up with him. I literally just wanted us to sit down and talk about our relationship, talk about what we wanted for it, and if we could see ourselves together in the future. Well, he took this as me saying that I wanted to be with other guys, so he instantly broke up with me and gave me no chance to talk. He told me I wasted his time, and that he had rejected really hot girls in order to stay faithful to me. I knew this was a sign that we shouldn't be together, so I simply let him leave. A few days after that, he started sending me messages on Instagram asking me why I was going out. I told him he needed to remember that he was the one that broke up with me, and that he had no right to ask me anymore what I was doing or who I was hanging out with. Then he sent me a drunk voicemail telling me that he would never find anybody like me, which he's totally right about, and for me to give him another chance. This is when I had to make a really hard decision. I chose to block him, delete his phone number, and delete him out of my life. I decided to work on myself, so I started going to the gym every single day. A few weeks later, I'm on the treadmill and I see my ex walk in. He knew that was my gym and he signed up to it. I won't lie, I was really flattered. The first thing he did was come up to me and try to strike up a conversation. I really had to resist the temptation to talk to him. I told him that right now wasn't a good time since I was working out. I started seeing him every single time I went to the gym after that. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how I got stuck in an elevator with my ex and we ended up doing the dirty. Started seeing him at my gym every single day, and at the same exact times that I went. Like I said in part 1, our relationship had always been really toxic, so I wouldn't have put it past him to start stalking me. Even though I had done a lot of work to get over him, part of me still really liked him. Every time I would see him, I would get butterflies, and I was actually flattered by the fact that he was following me around, which I know sounds terrible. But every time he would try to talk to me at the gym, I would just politely tell him it wasn't a good time, which he surprisingly respected. So the gym I go to is actually pretty fancy. There's all these different classes, so I decided to sign up to a few. Well, the instructor of this class was really good looking. After every single class, the trainer would always try to talk to me. Every time he would pass by me at the gym, he would say hello and just talk to me. And of course, I would literally sit there and have 5-minute conversations with him, whether or not my ex was around. After about a week of me talking to the trainer, I get a message from my ex on Instagram. He starts asking me if I'm interested in the trainer, and of course I said no. I told him that he needed to leave me alone and stop watching me at the gym. That's when he confessed his feelings and told me that he was still in love with me, and that he would do anything to get back with me. Luckily, I stayed strong and told him that I needed him to respect my space. The following day when I saw him at the gym, he tried to give me a hug. It was super awkward and I actually told him not to. The trainer came up to me and asked me if everything was okay in front of my ex. My ex, of course, started telling him that he needed to mind his own business. I could tell that the trainer was jealous and I could tell that my ex was jealous. It was super awkward, but I felt really flattered. And it made me really happy that my ex was starting to see the value in me, although it is sad that it took this to make him realize it. Luckily, things didn't escalate, but my ex pretended to leave the gym. When I left the gym later on, my ex was parked next to my car waiting for me. He tried to talk to me, but I just told him I didn't have time. That's when he went in for a kiss. I turned my face away, but he grabbed me and kissed me anyway. He told me that he wouldn't stop trying to win me back and that I was the love of his life. Part 3 is up. Part 3 of how I got stuck in an elevator with my ex and we ended up doing the dirty. After he grabbed my face and kissed me, I told him that he needed to back off. He told me that he wouldn't stop fighting for me and that I was the love of his life. I got in my car and went home. The very next day, I decided to go to the gym earlier just to avoid my ex. But what do you know? 10 minutes after I arrived, my ex shows up too. I decided I would literally not even make eye contact with him just so that he wouldn't come talk to me. I did a 30-minute workout and I started heading out of the gym. To get to my car, I had to take an elevator down. I get into the elevator and as the doors are closing, my ex sticks his hand in. He comes in and asks me if we could talk. I told him no once again. That's when he pressed the stop button on the elevator. I didn't freak out right away because I didn't think the elevator would get stuck. I decided to give him a chance and I heard what he had to say. Basically, he told me that he loved me and that he wanted to try to make things work again. I told him that I would think about it, but he needed to let me leave. I pressed the button on the elevator, but it wouldn't go. That's when we realized we were stuck in the elevator. Neither of our phones got signal, so there was no way I could call the gym or anybody in the building to help us. Before I knew it, a whole hour had passed and we were still stuck there. That's when my ex started begging me to kiss him. I kept saying no, but that didn't stop him. He went in for the kiss and it just didn't stop. And, you know, we did it. Luckily, someone let us out of the elevator a few minutes later. Long story short, we got back together after that. Now I'm having all these doubts. He's trying to be better, but I can tell he still wants to control me. I want to set boundaries with him, but I don't know how. Also, the trainer is still showing interest in me. What should I do? Story time about how my girlfriend is addicted to lip fillers, so now she looks ugly and I want to break up with her, but I don't know how. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I sent me on Instagram. My girlfriend and I have been together for 2 years. During that time, she's been obsessed with having bigger and bigger lips. When we first met, her lips weren't that thin, but she started watching the Kardashians and pretty much wanted to look like all the models she followed on Instagram. She asked me what I thought about her getting lip filler and I told her she could do whatever she wants, as long as it didn't change her face. She asked her whole family, but her sisters didn't want her to get the lip filler. They had a feeling that she would get addicted to it, so they told her not to. I thought they were just overreacting, but I was wrong. Last year, she went on a work trip to New York, and while she was there, she secretly got lip filler without telling me or her entire family. She sent me a picture of her new lips, and they actually looked pretty good. It wasn't too exaggerated, they just looked a little bit more plump. But after a few days, she decided to go back and get more lip filler. She said they didn't look big enough and that she just wanted a little bit more. I asked her to wait and not get the second injection, but she ended up doing it anyway. After her second injection, I asked her to send me pictures, but she wouldn't. She said she wanted to surprise me in person. I went to pick her up at the airport and her lips looked really big. She told me that the swelling would go down and that they would look a little bit more normal. Up until this point, I thought she looked really good. They were plump and it was actually really nice to kiss her. A few months later, she brought up the topic again. She told me she needed to even them out on one side, so she found another clinic to go to. They injected her with a lot more than she was expecting, so her lips looked really big. When she turned to the side, she looked like a duck. I started not wanting to kiss her and she noticed. I felt really bad for not wanting to kiss her, but every time I did, I could just feel the filler. It felt fake on my lips. After a few months, she mentioned the lip filler again. I begged her not to get any more and she said she wouldn't. Around Christmas time, I had a holiday party at my office. When my coworkers and my boss saw her, they were stunned. They asked me if that was the same girl that they had met before. I was embarrassed and made up an excuse to go home. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how my girlfriend is addicted to lip filler. Now she looks ugly and I want to break up with her, but I don't know how. Disclaimer, it's not my story time. It's sending me on Instagram. After my coworkers and boss noticed how ugly she looked, I was so embarrassed I decided to leave the party. When we got to the car, I decided to be honest with her and I told her the truth. I told her I hated how big her lips were and how they changed her face and that I was no longer attracted to her. Her reaction surprised me. She acted like she didn't care and told me that she was going to continue doing whatever she wanted to her face. Part of me had to respect the fact that she was doing what she wanted, but it couldn't be healthy to have lips that big. I asked her if we could at least compromise and if she could not get any more filler. That's when she told me that she had already scheduled another lip appointment. She told me she just wanted to change the shape of her lips to make them look more natural. I thought this was maybe going to help her look like her natural self again, but boy was I wrong. We didn't speak for about a week, so the next time I saw her, her lips were doubled the size. It was literally impossible for me not to stare at them. I felt embarrassed being seen with her. Now don't get me wrong, I didn't want to just break up with her because I did love her. I knew I needed to do something. After I saw my girlfriend, I decided to go to her house. I spoke to her parents and her sisters and they all agreed with me that we needed to have an intervention. When she finally arrived home, we showed her pictures of her before and her after. We told her that we loved her face how it was before, and her dad basically begged her not to get any more lip filler. But she took it as a joke and told us that we were overreacting, that nothing was wrong with her face and that she loved the way she looked. Then she told me I could use some lip filler myself. Part 3 is up. Part 3 of how my girlfriend is addicted to lip filler and now she looks ugly and I want to break up with her, but I don't know how. Disclaimer, is now story time and send me on Instagram. After her family and I begged her to stop, she told us we were all overreacting and that I should be the one to get lip filler because my lips were thin. I knew she was probably joking, but I was so angry that she wouldn't take us seriously. I stormed out of her house and didn't speak to her for 2 weeks. She called me every single day, but I wouldn't answer. I finally gave in because I really missed her and we saw each other. I tried to look past her Donald Duck lips, but I couldn't. It's like her whole face is being swallowed by 2 pillows. She swore to her family and I that she wouldn't get lip filler anymore, but now she says she wants to get cheek filler. And I know that this is going to lead her to wanting more and more. When I kiss her, they feel so fake and rubbery. I even have nightmares about her new face. A few months ago, I decided to break up with her. But when I talked to her, I just didn't have the heart to do it. I feel like she's going to convince me to stay with her. So I've basically been avoiding her for the past months. Anytime she wants to hang out, I just make excuses. Her sister called me and told me that my girlfriend thinks I'm cheating on her. But I told her I was no longer attracted to her with her big ass lips. Her sister told me that she understood, but that I needed to break up with her face to face. I've written a letter basically saying that I love her, but I can no longer see her the same, but I can't bring myself to giving it to her, much less saying it to her face. I'm hoping you guys can help me out and give me some advice. She wants us to go on a couples trip together, but I'm afraid I'm just gonna stare at her lips all day. I told her I couldn't go on the trip because of work, but that's not true. I feel like maybe starting to act like a bad boyfriend is gonna make her leave me, which will be easier on me. But who knows how long that will take. I've always been such a loyal boyfriend, but I can't take this anymore. I signed up to Bumble and I've been talking to other girls. I'm tempted to go on dates, but I can't bring myself to doing it. Not until I break up with her. But maybe the easier option will be to make her believe that I am cheating on her so that she can break up with me. I feel like such an asshole for saying this, but am I the asshole? Should I stay with her no matter what? Or should I leave her? What should I do? Story time about how my husband is threatening to cheat on me unless we have a 3-person sexy time, if you know what I mean. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's sending me on Instagram. My husband and I have been married for 5 years. The first year we were together, we had kids. We have 2 kids now, and they are my priority. A year ago, my husband started complaining about how I don't pay any attention to him anymore. I started doing my best to try to give him more affection and just more time with me, but it's so hard with the kids. My husband does help me with the kids, but he works a lot and goes to the gym a lot. So when he's not home, it's basically my responsibility to do everything for the kids. They never tell you how hard hard it is to have kids and how hard it is to look after yourself and your relationship. I suggested we have date nights, but we still haven't gone on any. I told him that we should just go to the beach and hang out on our own, but he kept making up excuses. A month ago, he asked me if I would ever consider having a 3-person sexy time. I hope you understand what I mean. I told him I wouldn't be comfortable with that, and he said okay. A few days after that, he asked me again. This time I probed and asked him why he was saying that. That's when he confessed that the only way he can stay faithful is by inviting someone else into our bedroom. I was really heartbroken. I never expected him to say anything like that to me, or I just started to cry. Then he got angry because I started to cry and told me that he needs to have more fun in this relationship. I asked him if he had already cheated on me, and he swore that he didn't. The kids were in the other bedroom, so I didn't want to start another argument. I let it go, but I couldn't stop thinking about what he had told me. That's when I got scared that he might actually cheat on me. I started becoming really insecure, and he hated this. I started asking him almost on a daily basis if he had cheated on me. He kept denying it, so I believed him. A few days later, we got into a fight about the kids. Out of nowhere, he starts threatening to cheat on me unless we have a 3-person sexy time. This time, he wouldn't let it go. He told me he would find somebody to cheat on me with, but for me not to worry because it wouldn't mean anything to him. He was basically asking me for permission to have an affair. I felt hopeless, so I finally accepted his offer. That's when he got really excited and started showing me pictures of girls at the gym. He told me he'd been talking to a few already and that he could get one of the girls to come to our house that very same week. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how my husband is threatening to cheat on me unless we have a 3-person sexy time. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Send me on Instagram. That's when he told me that he could have a girl come to our house this week. Felt like I had no choice but to accept because I didn't want him to cheat on me. Later that night, I asked him who he'd been talking to at the gym. He told me there were several girls at the gym that would flirt with him every single time, and that one of them had offered to come to our house. I couldn't get it out of my head that he had probably already cheated on me with one of these girls. I mean, why try to involve me when he could do it on his own with them? A few days later, he told me there was a girl that was willing to come over to our house on Friday. That's when my husband asked me to go get waxed and to go to the salon and do something to my hair. So I went to get waxed and got highlights at the salon. I won't lie, I actually felt really good after this. When my husband saw me later that night, he said I looked amazing. One thing about me, I've always been pretty athletic, and since having kids, my body has snapped back. I'm not very self-conscious about my body, but the thought of having someone else in our bedroom just made me feel gross. She finally arrived and I was expecting a young hot thing. This woman was in her 40s. She was 12 years older than me, and she was not in very good shape. By the way, we left the kids with a babysitter, so don't worry. We all went up to the bedroom, and my husband poured us glasses of wine. That's when my husband kissed the woman. Part 3 is up. Part 3 of how my husband is threatening to cheat on me unless we have a 3-person sexy time, if you know what I mean. Disclaimers are not my story time. Send me on Instagram. The 3 of us were finally up in the bedroom. My husband leaned in to kiss her and they were making out for about 30 seconds. Right in front of me like I didn't even exist. That's when it hit me and I realized what we were about to do. I was in my own house, in my own bedroom with a random woman who was older than me, and no offense, I thought I was definitely more attractive. Finally, when they stopped kissing, I tell my husband I can't do this. That's when he gets really angry, grabs me by the arm and takes me into the hallway. He tells me if I don't do this, then I should just leave the house because he's still gonna do it with her, and that from now on he would be able to do whatever he wanted because I wasn't willing to cooperate. Thankfully, the woman came out of the bedroom and told my husband that it wasn't worth it if we were going to be arguing. He begged her not to leave. It was pathetic, but of course she left anyway. That's when he grabs his things and tells me he's going to the gym. Cried for 3 hours and went to pick up the kids. When my husband got home, he apologized and told me that he probably overreacted. Probably? Then he starts begging me to please reconsider doing it again with the same woman. That's when I asked him if he had a thing for older women. I told him that I was much more attractive and younger than this other woman, so why did he want her? Then he confessed that his thing is older women. Then he asked me what was the oldest I would be willing to go. I told him I didn't know if I even wanted to do it with someone else. That's when he started threatening again. He said he'd go do it either way and that I would just have to deal with it. That's when I told him that maybe we should just consider getting a divorce. He got so angry he smashed a glass on the countertop. After I let him calm down, I asked him if he'd already been having an affair with that woman. He keeps denying it, but something's telling me he already did it. Told me he wouldn't give me the divorce because he loves me, but he's also saying he's gonna cheat on me. I'm seriously considering inviting the woman back over just to please my husband. I know that's just gonna lead to bad things. I asked my best friend and she told me to just go through with it, and that if I have to save my marriage by having other people in my bed, then I should just do it. But I just can't bring myself to saying yes. I told my mom and she told me to get a divorce no matter what. She guarantees that he's already cheated. Should I say yes or should I leave him? Story time about how my husband hired a really hot assistant and now I want him to fire her, but he won't. Am I the asshole? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Send me on Instagram. My husband and I have been together for 4 years. Now, I've never suspected him of cheating, but I have caught him lying to me a few times. A few years back, I checked his Facebook Messenger and caught him messaging another girl. The messages weren't exactly inappropriate, but they were definitely flirty. When I asked him if he was messaging anyone on Facebook, he denied it. That's when I unleashed the beast and told him that I had seen the messages. That's when he told me that he wanted to break up because he didn't want to stop messaging her. This was some random girl that he had met at his job. We actually did break up for a few days, but then he literally begged me on his knees to stay with him. Then I caught him lying a second time. He told me he was going out to dinner with a friend of his who I already knew, and it was a woman. I had no problem with him going out to dinner with her because we already knew each other from a few years back. At the time, I was away for work. After 8 hours, he still hadn't messaged me. I decided to call him, but he didn't answer. That's when I tracked his location and realized that he was somewhere in the city. He finally messaged me telling me that he was home and he was trying to get to sleep. I took a screenshot of his location and sent it to him. Then he called me begging me for forgiveness. He told me he thought I'd probably get jealous if he knew that he was still with her. Obviously, I wasn't going to get jealous. It was just more upsetting that he lied to me. All of that was a few years ago. Since then, he's always been on his best behavior. About a year ago, my husband started a new company and it's been very successful. So successful that he's hired a full staff. Up until now, all of them have been men. But about a week ago, he told me he needed an assistant. That's when I told him I knew a friend of mine who needed a job. This woman is much older than us and would never be interested in my husband. But my husband told me that he was looking for somebody younger and someone that was interested in the field of work. A few days after that, he had finally hired somebody. I didn't really think anything of it though. By the way, I work in financing, so I'm usually working from home. My husband and I usually meet up for lunch, so I decided to go pick him up from work. But when I got there, a young hot girl asked me if I had an appointment to see my own husband. I told her I was the owner's wife and she laughed it off. She then apologized really quickly but didn't really mean it. Let me tell you how this girl was dressed. She wore a crop top and super tight leggings. She also had a full face of makeup on and her hair was freshly curled. It looked like she was dressed to go to a club, or at least trying to impress someone. Part 2 is up. Part 2, am I the asshole for wanting my husband to fire his hot assistant? Disclaimer, it's not my story time, I sent me on Instagram. After I told her I was the owner's wife, she made sure to stand up and show off her body to me. That's when I saw how tight all her clothes were. She then waltzed into my husband's office and tells him that I'm there. My husband quickly came out, almost running, and I asked him if everything was okay. That's when he said, yes, I just wanted to introduce you to my new assistant. Her name is Anna. Anna and I shook hands and I could feel that her palms were sweaty. That's when I knew something was up. My husband told her that she could leave for the day since he was going to be gone for a few hours. And guess what? She insisted on staying until he got back. And it's like she was doing it all because I was there. When my husband and I finally got into the car, I told him that I wanted him to fire her. He started to laugh and asked me why. I told him that the way she was dressed was incredibly inappropriate and that it looked like she was about to go party with all the makeup and hair that she had on. And of course, he told me I was overreacting and that he wouldn't fire her. Then he kissed me and reassured me that he wasn't even attracted to her. I asked him why he hired her and he told me that she was really smart and fast. Then I told him that if he didn't fire her, that him and I would have problems. He got in a bad mood for the rest of the day. Part 3 is up. Part 3, am I the asshole for wanting my husband to fire his hot assistant? Disclaimer, this is not my story time, send me on Instagram. After the second time I told him to fire her, he once again said no and got in a really bad mood for the rest of the day. That's when I told him that it was clear that she had a thing for him and that she was obviously dressing up and putting on all that makeup and hair just for him. He told me that she had a boyfriend and that she wasn't interested in him like that. But I don't believe it at all. You know, women's intuition? From the moment I met her, I got the feeling she was trying to show off her body and her palms were sweaty as in she was nervous. That's when I decided I would go to my husband's office every single day. And guess what? I decided to dress up too. I put on a sexy outfit to pick up my husband the following day, and she was dressed in the exact same way. Super tight leggings, crop top, and showing off cleavage. Her hair and makeup were done again. As soon as she saw me coming into the office, she gave me a really dirty look. I asked her if anything was wrong and she said no. I couldn't help myself and I told her that the way she looked at me was weird. Then she apologized and told me that she didn't mean anything by it. My husband came out of his office and told me that Anna, his assistant, had already brought him lunch and that he didn't need to go to lunch with me. I was furious. I gave my husband a kiss and went home. I insisted once again that he needed to fire her later and he said no. So guess what I did? I got myself a really hot personal trainer. Of course, my husband got really jealous. I told him that I wouldn't stop working out with him until he fires his assistant. He thinks I'm being terrible for wanting him to fire her, but I don't trust that girl one bit. And I can't say I trust my husband 100%. Am I the asshole? Anyway, my trainer has been flirting with me hardcore. I'm planning on making my husband as jealous as possible. Bye. Story time about how I stole my best friend's boyfriend and she ended up poisoning me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, send me on Instagram. I met my ex-best friend 10 years ago. We hit it off right away in school and were inseparable. But shortly into our friendship, I noticed how jealous and envious she was. She envied my life and everything that I had. I got lots of attention from boys and she didn't. Every time we would go out, I was the one constantly getting hit on. It actually made me feel so bad for her. I stopped dressing up whenever we would hang out, and I even stopped wearing makeup just to make her feel better. She asked me if I was doing that on purpose and I told her no. I told her I just wanted to feel more natural and that it had nothing to do with her. But this actually started working. That's when she started borrowing my clothes and my makeup. She didn't even know how to use makeup, so I would do it for her. Every single weekend that we would go out, she would look really amazing. I would do her makeup and her hair and dress her up before we went out. Usually I would go in jeans and a t-shirt and not do anything to my hair or my face. But like I said, I only did this when I would go out with her. Whenever I went out with other friends, I would always look my best. But it actually started to work. Instead of me getting hit on at the bars and clubs, she would get hit on. And this made her feel so much better. And it actually made me really happy too. She started going on a few dates, and she had really good guys interested in her. One of the guys was in financing, owned a house, and traveled a lot, and was good looking too. The other one owned his own business, was good looking, really tall, and wanted kids right away. He would basically tell her that he wanted to marry her. But instead of being interested in them, she wanted to date more guys. She became a serial dater. Before I knew it, every single weekend I would go to her house to help her get ready for her dates, which by the way would take me 2 to 3 hours to do her hair, makeup, and outfit. But like I said, I was happy to help her. On one occasion, I told her I couldn't come over to do her makeup and her hair because I had a date of my own. She told me I was ungrateful and hung up the phone on me. I was shocked by her behavior. While I was on my date, she called me 10 times. When I answered, she demanded to know where I was. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how I stole my best friend's boyfriend and she ended up poisoning me. Disclaimer, it's not my story time. Send me on Instagram. After I see her 10 missed calls while I was on my date, I finally call her back. And when I answered, all she asked me was where I was. I told her I was on my date and that I couldn't talk. That's when she told me that she would just bring the makeup to where I was so that I could help her do her makeup for her date. I was so angry that I decided to defend myself. I told her she was being a brat and super ungrateful. Then I told her I was going to hang up on her and not talk to her for the next few days. I decided to turn off my phone for the rest of the night. Finally, a few days later, I decided to call her. That's when she gives me a half-ass apology telling me she shouldn't have done that and that she was acting like a brat. That's when I told her I didn't want to do her makeup and hair every single weekend. She said she would learn how to do her own makeup if I could just teach her. So of course I agreed. After that, things got way better between us. She actually ended up becoming girlfriend with one of the guys, the one that was the business owner. She insisted that we do a double date. So I ended up having a date come with me to dinner with them. We were having fun up until my best friend started getting really drunk. This is when she just started acting out. She started telling the guys about how much I would get hit on and about all the dates I've been on, about how many sexy time partners I had. I mean, this is girl code. You do not talk about exes or guys that your girlfriend is dating to her boyfriend or date. I was so angry with her. Her boyfriend looked at me, apologized, and said that he would take her home. So my date and I decided to stay at the restaurant and finish our dinner. Then I get a message from my best friend's boyfriend apologizing on her behalf. He asked me if he could call me on the phone and we talked for an hour. Part 2 is up. Part 3 of how I stole my best friend's boyfriend and she ended up poisoning me. Disclaimers are not my story time. Send me on Instagram. My BF's boyfriend called me. He apologized for my best friend's behavior while she was drunk. I told him that I would talk to her whenever she was sober. Before I knew it, he and I had been on the phone for a full hour. He was making me laugh so much and we were having such a great conversation. We finally got off the phone and I literally had butterflies in my stomach. And I started thinking about him differently. I mean, I knew that he was my best friend's boyfriend, but he was being so nice. And he was successful and funny and good looking. That's when I decided to cut my best friend off. I stopped answering her texts and phone calls. One day she showed up at my house asking me if I could help her get ready for another date. I told her that I didn't want to be her friend anymore and basically slammed the door in her face. She kept calling me to apologize and eventually I accepted. But her boyfriend and I didn't stop texting. I started to realize that I was falling for him, so I decided to tell him that I had feelings and that we shouldn't talk anymore. That's when he told me that he had feelings for me too. All this while, I would still hang out with my best friend every single weekend. She would bring me food and make us drinks while she was at my place. I started feeling different symptoms after a few weeks. I would get these really bad headaches and I just felt sick all the time. I decided to go to the doctor and they couldn't find anything. One day her boyfriend calls me and tells me that he really wants to see me. He comes over to my house and we kissed. He told me that he wanted to break up with her to be with me. I couldn't resist and I said yes. When we confronted her, she said that she had seen our messages already. She called me a bunch of names and told me that she had been poisoning me. First I didn't believe her, but then I went and got tested and it was true. I haven't spoken to her since and I don't know if I should tell the cops. Him and I are still together. What should I do? Story time about how I caught my boyfriend cheating on me with my dad's girlfriend. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. My boyfriend and I had been together for 5 months. We met through Instagram, of course. Now my dad and his girlfriend have been together for 2 years. They have a really toxic relationship. He constantly tries to make him jealous, and my dad does not trust her at all. My dad has a lot of money and women always want to date him. I mean, he has options. He doesn't need to be with this woman. When they first moved in together, my dad had a Rolex and several $1,000s go missing. He also caught her snooping around his desk one time. She denied having stolen anything, and she threatened my dad to break up with him. Of course, my dad begged her to stay. My dad's girlfriend, let's call her Annie. Annie and I started going out together. She's 10 years older than me, so we got along pretty well. My dad would ask me to keep an eye on her every time we went out. But without fail, she would flirt with every single guy at the bar. But I didn't have the heart to tell my dad. Eventually, I met my future boyfriend and we hit it off right away because we both love Harry Potter. Of course, Annie wanted to go out with us all the time. One day, I come home early from school and I find them on the couch, doing very dirty things to each other. They were full on making out. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Part 2 is up. I walk in to find my boyfriend and my dad's girlfriend full on making out on the couch. Disclaimers are not my story time. My instinct was to pull out my phone and start recording. So I did. I knew that when I told my dad, she would deny it. So I wanted to have solid proof of this. I've been with my boyfriend for 5 months at this point. I can't say I knew him 100%, but I never expected him to cheat on me with my dad's girlfriend. Finally, my boyfriend goes to take off his shirt and sees me. He freaks out. He basically throws her off of him and she lands on the floor. That's when she starts laughing and says that they were just playing a joke on me. No you weren't. My boyfriend told her to shut up. He then straight up ran away from my house. He told me he never wanted to see me or my effed up family again. I'm the effed up one? When my dad got home, I showed him the video of his girlfriend making out with my boyfriend. My dad went up the stairs, packed her bags, and threw her out of the house. It was raining, by the way, and he took away her car keys because he had bought her a new Tesla. But she denied everything. Part 3 is up. After my dad kicked her out, she sat in the rain with all of her bags. She kept denying that she cheated on him with my boyfriend, even though I had video proof of it. Okay, so here's the really messed up part. My dad ended up taking her back. She came back and begged him for forgiveness. And when he took her back, I just cried. It's as if she put a spell on my dad. He even gave her back the Tesla he bought her. Now that she's back in the house, I can't stand to see her. So my dad is getting me my own apartment. I love living with my dad, but I can't stand that woman. My apartment is so beautiful. I get tons of natural sunlight, and I have my friends over all the time. A little update on my ex. Remember he told me to never contact him again? He asked one of my friends for my address and they gave it to him. Yes, I was very angry at my friend, by the way. He showed up to my apartment and begged me for forgiveness. He told me that I was the best thing that ever happened to him and that he was really sorry. I asked him why he cheated on me with my dad's girlfriend, and he told me that she just has this thing, and that for some reason guys are just super attracted to her. I mean, I think this woman is a witch. He told me he couldn't control it. I'm actually considering giving him a second chance. I know I shouldn't, but I still like him. He bought me a Chanel bag and has been bringing me food every single day. I hate myself for wanting to take him back. What should I do? Story time about how my boyfriend controls everything I do, including the way I dress and even my makeup. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's sending me on Instagram. My boyfriend and I have been together on and off for a year. From the beginning of the relationship, he started controlling the way that I dressed. He didn't like me wearing any tight clothes, short skirts or crop tops, anything that showed cleavage. He didn't even like me wearing any bathing suits or bikinis to the beach. I had to cover myself with a towel the entire time. This would obviously enrage me, and we would get into really severe fights because of it. I told him I needed a break because I didn't like being controlled. Of course, he got upset and told me that we should just break up. 2 months later, he messaged me on Instagram and we started seeing each other again. But of course, this time I told him that things were going to be different. At first, he agreed that he wouldn't control the way that I dressed, but instead he started controlling things like my hair and my makeup. He didn't want me to wear any makeup, like zero. Anytime we would hang out, he would automatically tell me to take off my lipstick. He said it called too much attention to my face, and he threatened to break up with me because obviously I was wanting attention from other men. That's when I calmly explained to him that I wore makeup for myself and not for anyone else, not even for him. Then he did the unthinkable. He grabbed a handful of my makeup and threw it into the toilet. Part 2 is up. That's when he grabbed a handful of my expensive makeup and threw it into the toilet. Disclaimers into my story time. Then he basically told me that he forbade me from ever wearing makeup again. That's when he also told me that he wanted me to close down my Instagram and that there were too many men commenting on my pictures telling me how beautiful I was. He told me I needed to grow up and become more mature instead of looking for men online. I told him that he was being jealous and insecure. That's when he got really mad. He told me the only person that I should want to look good for is him. Then he went around my bedroom looking for my makeup. He was in such a rage that I was afraid he was going to do something to me. Then he found my curling and straightening iron. He started trying to break them against my desk. That's when I told him I needed him to leave and that if he didn't leave, I would call the cops. He started laughing at me and told me that no cop would take me seriously. But he did end up leaving. We didn't speak for 3 weeks until he called me apologizing. I told him that there was no way I could accept him back into my life because he was too controlling. Then he asked me out for dinner, telling me he wanted to apologize to me. At this point, I still had feelings for him, so I said yes. And guess what? We ended up getting back together. But things only got worse. Part 3 is up. Part 3 of how my boyfriend controls everything I do, including the way that I dress. I made the mistake of taking him back for a second time. For the first few weeks, he was on his best behavior. We would go out to dinners and I would dress really cute and do my makeup and hair. Obviously, I could tell that it bothered him, but he was making an effort not to say anything or cause any fights. Here's when things get worse. My best friend had planned a whole party for my birthday. She even got a band and catering. I decided I wanted to buy a beautiful outfit. So my best friend and I go shopping. My boyfriend asked me if he could tag along and I had no choice but to say yes. As we were shopping, he started making little comments about dresses that I picked. He would say things like, "Wow, that's really short." Obviously, I didn't want to make a scene in front of my best friend, so I just ignored his comments. I finally chose a backless dress. It was so beautiful and I loved it so much. When I tried it on, my best friend complimented me, but all my boyfriend said was, "You look like a slut." That's when all hell broke loose. My best friend got right up in his face and told him that he couldn't come to the party. Of course, he got right up in her face too. He started attacking her with words. He told her she was a wannabe Kardashian, but that she would never be as beautiful. This all happened in like 10 seconds. I told my boyfriend to leave and he did. I asked him not to come to my birthday party, but he did anyway. As soon as he saw me, he pulled me aside and told me to change. And he even brought me this horrible dress to put on. That's when I had security kick him out. I called his mother and told her everything. And she's furious because she loves me. How should I break up with him?